everybody, it's Kyleen. It's Friday morning for Fashionable Friday Live. Just here today to talk to you about how to dress your body when you're short-waisted or long-waisted or top or bottom heavy. So before I start, I want to talk a little bit about what tends to happen when we start talking about our body and examining it and looking at all our flaws. We can kind of get down on ourselves. So I don't want you to do that to yourself. I want you to realize that what I'm talking about today are just guidelines, and they're things to help you, but it's not meant for you to get, oh gosh, I have this problem and I have that problem and I have this figure flaw and that figure flaw, because what I know from dressing women for as long as I've been dressing women is there is not a perfect body out there. It's all about using clothes to try to give the illusion of perfect proportion when we know nobody has perfect proportion. So just make sure that you remember that as you're talking about it, and just don't let yourself get down on yourself. Remember that you can ask questions if you're watching the live video. You just need to type them in the comments and then they'll come up and I'll be able to answer them. So feel free to do that at any time throughout the live video if you'd like. And so let's get started. So last video I told you how to measure your waist to find out if you're short-waisted or long-waisted. Hopefully you've done that. If you haven't, you need to do that now. So what you want to do is you want to measure from your very last rib, find your very last rib, measure from there to the top of your hip bone. If the space between those two is a couple inches, it's you're short-waisted. If it's 4 inches or more, you're long-waisted. So if you're in the 3 range, then that means you're pretty well proportioned. And a lot of these things that we're going to talk about today are not going to apply so much to you. The other thing that we're going to talk about is if you're busty, top heavy, or hippie, bottom heavy. So anyway, let's get into it. So the first thing we want to talk about is being short-waisted. So what that means is that you have long legs and a short torso. So your waist is a little bit higher and you have a shorter torso, and so you need to try to bring that waist down and balance out those legs and your torso. So that's kind of what you're going to try to do with your proportions and how you put your clothing together. So when you're short-waisted, you want to choose monochromatic outfits. Monochromatic, which I've talked about in my other videos, is head to toe same color. So this is an example of monochromatic. So the top and the bottom are exactly the same color. Anytime you choose monochromatic, it's going to give you a nice, long, lean line. And that's always going to be a more slimming, more proportion building kind of thing. So you want to choose monochromatic outfits. And you also want to choose lower rises. So here's an example of a silver. This is the Elise Slim Boot Silver. So it has just a little bit of small boot. And it is a mid-rise. So what mid-rise means is an inch below your belly button. Low rise is going to be more like 2 inches below your belly button. Generally, unless you're a teenager, and even some of those girls, they shouldn't be doing low rises. I don't recommend low rises for women because they tend to push everything up and out and create a muffin top. But a mid-rise is okay, and a mid-rise is really good for short-waisted women because, again, it's going to bring that waist down, and that's kind of what you're trying to do. So a mid-rise, an inch below your belly button is where you want that rise to sit. And so you're going to want to choose pants that are mid-rise pants. Now that can be a little tricky, right? Because there's mid-rise jeans, but there's not really mid-rise slacks. I haven't found any mid-rise slacks. So, you know, again, that's maybe not a super practical thing. When you can choose low mid-rises, you want to choose mid-rises, realizing that that's not always going to be possible, especially if you're dressing for work. So mid-rise is one of the things you want to do if you're short-waisted. And then also you want to do longer skirts and jackets. So again, you don't want to do, you want to keep your jackets so they're elongating your torso and they're not hitting you here and emphasizing the fact that your torso is already short. So just think about in your clothing choices, how do I elongate my torso? And when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you can ask yourself, okay, is this making me look shorter, or is this elongating my body? And that's a good kind of just guide for you as you're trying to make good decisions about your clothing. But this is an example of a longer jacket. So you see how it's coming down way past, it's all the way down to the widest part of my hip. Okay, so longer skirts and wider jackets are going to be a good choice for you. And then you're also going to want to choose anything that has long vertical lines. So I chose this tunic this morning because it's a good example of how this is producing long vertical lines. Even though the print is kind of a asymmetrical kind of print, you can see that in general the print is moving the eye down, and that's what you're going to want to do. If you're short-waisted, you don't want to do horizontal lines because you want to elongate this part of your body. So this is a good example of doing that. And then when you put the cute little skinny jean that I have underneath of this with that, then you're making a nice long line all the way down your body, which is going to make you look taller. Okay, some things that you want to avoid if you're short-waisted. You want to avoid things that come in at the waist because they're going to emphasize the fact that your torso is short. So for example, this little top ties on the side. So when I get this top tied, it's really going to emphasize my waist. This is a perfect top if you are really nicely proportioned and you're not short-waisted or long-waisted. This is something that you're going to want to do. But you're going to want to avoid, hi Sandra, you're going to want to avoid this kind of a look if you are short-waisted. Another thing you want to avoid is anything that's going to draw attention to your waist with some kind of a detail. Remember last week we talked about details in clothing. And see how this cute little sweatshirt here has this seam that goes right across the waist there. So that is going to naturally draw attention to the waist. So you don't want to choose that kind of a detail if you're short-waisted. You don't want to draw attention to your waist if you're short-waisted. Okie dokie. You want to avoid wide waistbands or belts. So anything, again, because I'm sure you can visualize this with me. If you're short in the torso and then you wear a great big wide waistband or wide belt, it's going to make that so obvious that you're short in the torso, right? So you don't want to do anything that's going to do that. So you want to avoid, we're not really in a belt trend right now, so that's not something that you probably have to worry about right now, but belts will come back and wide belts will come back. And so when they do, don't wear wide belts. And if you have them in your closet, out they go. Okay, so long-waisted. So long-waisted is the opposite. Instead of being short, your torso is long and you tend to have shorter legs. So long-waisted, you want to bring the waist up. So with that, you want to wear higher waisted garments. So we talked about this last week. Short-waisted girls wear lower rises. Long-waisted girls wear regular rises or even higher rises. Okay, because again, you're trying to bring that waist up. And so right now, it's pretty easy to find regular rise. Higher, and when I say regular rise, I'm talking about something that comes right to your natural waist. If I say high rise, then that's something that's coming even above that. And that's actually a trend right now. The high rise pants are kind of trendy right now, but it's a very fringe. It's very like California, New York. I mean, it really hasn't hit the Midwest yet. So for you, what's going to make sense is to look for regular rise pants. And I have to tell you that I'm long-waisted, and I love the feeling of having my regular rise waists, just because it just helps me feel tucked in. And when you have extra room right here, there's more of that middle part that's going to want to spill out over. And so those regular rises just really help you feel a little bit more slim and trim, which we all like to feel. Okay, and then you're going to choose slim leg trousers. So here's an example of a slim legged trouser. So it's not skinny necessarily, can you see that? But it's going to be straight or slim. Those are going to be really flattering for you if you're long-waisted. And you want to do, this was a neat trick. You want to choose heels or shoes in the same tone as your bottom. And if you think about that, that makes complete sense because you want to elongate your leg. So remember we talked about any point of color contrast is going to draw the eye. So if you're choosing shoes that match your bottoms, then that eye is just going to go right down that leg and keep going, and it's going to give you the appearance of longer legs. So shoes that match your bottoms is going to be a good trick for you to use. Heels are a good trick for you to use because you're short-legged generally. And then also belts that match your bottoms. And again, that's to create that higher waist. So you're bringing that waist up as much as you can. So those are good tricks for helping you if you're long-waisted. You want to avoid patterned bottoms like this, which are trendy right now. That's a cute little new one from Multiples that just came in. But patterned bottoms are going to draw attention to your legs. More than likely your legs are already short, so you don't want to draw attention to your legs. So you're going to want to avoid patterned bottoms. And you are going to want to avoid low-waisted clothes again, so you're going to want to be bringing that waist up higher. Hi, Joni. Okay, so anyway, that is pretty much what I have for long-waisted and short-waisted. Now let's talk about top-heavy and bottom-heavy. So top-heavy is your busty, your full busted, maybe even full-chested, just, you know, like wide in the shoulders, wide in the rib cage. So when I'm saying top-heavy, I'm talking about you ladies. And you want to elongate your torso and neck to balance everything out. So you don't want to have round necks like this. You want to have open necks that are going to help balance that bustiness or that full top. You're going to want to choose dark tops and lighter bottoms. So remember, general rule of thumb, whatever part of your body you're wanting to de-emphasize, you put the darker color on that part of your body. So here is an example of like an open-necked or wider-necked blouse. So you can see this is a tribal, and it has a natural V-neck right here. Or if you are doing a jacket, something that opens at the top as opposed to buttoned up like this. Any kind of an open neck is going to help balance out that bustiness for you. And you're also going to want to choose undetailed tops. So remember last week we talked about detail, and that's like any kind of embellishment. So that's ruffles or embroidery or seams or anything that's going to embellish or draw attention. So you're going to want to choose simple, clean, darker tops to de-emphasize your top heaviness, and then do more with your bottom. Also, you're going to want to avoid double-breasted. Double-breasted is really hard for ladies that are busty. Most of the time it never lays right anyway, and you've probably already experienced that. You probably already know double-breasted is not for me. You're going to want to avoid sweaters and, you're going to want to avoid collars with large lapels and anything that adds bulk around the neck. So here's an example of something that's adding bulk around the neck. And most of my ladies that are busty already know scarves are probably not a good thing. Because what happens is you have a shelf, and that scarf just lays right there, and it just looks bulky and heavy, and it draws attention, and you don't want to do that. And most of you already know that just intuitively. You're like, no, I don't think that's good for me. So you're going to want to avoid things that are going to draw attention to your neck. However, this little cute little tunic, sweater tunic here, would be adorable on you without the scarf, because there you've got a real clean top. The only problem here is round neck. Would be better if you had an open neck, but real clean top that's not going to add a bunch of bulk around your neck. You're going to want to avoid that. You're also going to want to avoid heavily textured things, so like this chenille sweater, which is adorable, but so much texture here is going to add bulk to your top, and you don't want to do that. You want to do the opposite of that. You're also going to want to avoid, you know, anything like this with fur or heavy thick knits, anything that's going to be that's going to add a lot of attention or even added bulk to what you already have. Here's another example, heavy textured sweater like that, as opposed to something like this that's a lot smoother texture. So you're going to want to choose the smoother textures. Alrighty, so that is some help for being top heavy. With bottom heavy, you are full in the hips or the rear, and you want to try to elongate your body to take away attention from that. You want to balance out your hips with your shoulders. So generally, bottom heavy ladies are smaller shouldered. That's that classic pear shape. Smaller shouldered, and then they carry all their weight in their hips and their rear. And lots of us have this problem. So what you want to do is you want to choose tops that fit close to the body, but then float over your hips. So here's a good example of that. This top is going to fit nicely up here, and then it's going to just nicely float over the bottom part of your body that is heavier. So you don't want things that are pulling, and you don't want things that are boxy. You want to avoid either of those two things. You want it to just float over the top of your body. So you don't want it stiff. You don't want it like laying, like coming and sticking out like this. You want a fabric that's going to be soft and moving, and that's going to just lay nicely over the top of those hips and rear. You want to avoid short kinds of things like this. See, this is going to come right to the top of my hip bone. So that is going to draw attention to everything that's below, and that's normally where our heaviness starts, is at the hip bone. So you're not going to want to do short jackets like this. You're going to want to do jackets that come down below the widest part of your body. So if your hips are wide, you want a jacket that's coming right below that to avoid drawing attention to that area. Here's an example of a tonal. You want to do tonal outfits, which means same color, two different shades of the same color, and you want your darker color to be on the bottom. So here's an example of a tonal outfit. So this little jacket is in navy and denim. This is a new one that just came in. We just got our multiple samples in, so I picked a lot of the things that I'm demonstrating these principles with out of the multiple samples. But anyway, so here's their jean. So this darker jean is going to go on the bottom, and then this lighter jacket on the top. And again, the jacket, you're going to want to have it hit you at the right place. That's an example of a tonal outfit, and that's going to do a good job of de-emphasizing that hip area. You want to avoid shiny fabrics like this velvet, because obviously shiny fabrics are going to attract attention to the part of the body that they're on. So you don't want to put a shiny fabric or a heavily textured fabric, anything that's going to draw attention. You don't want to have that fabric be on the widest part of your body, the part that you're trying to detract attention from. Okay, let's make sure that I've said everything I wanted to say here. Lower waisted bottoms will balance curvy hips. So again, if you get that waist a little bit lower, it's going to de-emphasize the amount that the hip goes out. So a lower rise is going to be a benefit to you. And then you want straight leg trousers as opposed to skinny leg trousers. So what happens when you put a skinny leg trouser on a woman who's hippie is she can kind of tend to look like an exclamation point with the wide at the top and the skinny at the bottom, and you don't want that. So you remember, everything is about using your clothes to reproportion your body or give the illusion of good proportion. So if your hips are wide, you want to balance that, so you're going to choose wider legged bottoms that are going to balance those hips. So you're going to avoid skinny-legged bottoms, and you're going to go for straight or even a flare leg. It's going to be a better choice for you. And avoid clingy fabrics on the bottom. We talked about shiny fabrics. Avoid anything on the bottom that has details. So if you're bottom heavy, you're not going to want to do a printed bottom. Again, it's going to draw attention to that area. And you're going to avoid pleats, anything that's adding bulk. And you're going to avoid anything boxy. That's really important. If you're bottom heavy, you get a boxy top on, you're going to look like a box. You're going to have no shape at all. So you want to make sure that you are avoiding boxy kinds of tops. Again, a lot of that is in the fabric that you choose. If you're choosing the softer fabrics that are not stiff, that are going to lay against your body, those are going to be better for you than a stiff fabric. Alrighty, so that is my presentation today on short-waisted and long-waisted, top heavy and bottom heavy. Next time we're going to talk about how to choose the right colors for you, which I am a huge believer in shopping by color. I really have seen the benefit of that in my own closet, and so I'm going to talk to you about what I've learned about that. Yeah, I know, that's good. And it's a hard thing, right? I mean, it's something like if you don't get it, like if it doesn't come naturally to you, you're kind of like, oh, I have no idea what colors to choose. So we're going to try to demystify that whole thing a little bit. And wanted you to know that for the fashionistas, if you shop this week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, anytime between now and Sunday, this print, the Havana Dot and the Havana Rose, those prints are 25% off. All you have to do is use the code word Vera Lovely. And that's a special deal for you girls. You were the first to know about that sale. We have some good pieces in that print. We have that weekender bag that I just showed you. We have this little jewelry case, which makes a great gift, by the way. It's fairly inexpensive. It's $54, and it holds jewelry or makeup, either one. And then it zips up, and then you can hang it on a door. So pretty cool. All right, so thought for the day is Maya Angelou said something like this: people will forget what you said and they will forget what you did, but they're never going to forget how you made them feel. So go out and be a light in your world today, ladies, and have a wonderful day.